I still remember the day I stumbled into the presence of the Buddha, dragging my feet and gasping under the weight of my own body. The pain was unbearable, not just physical but spiritual. I had wealth beyond measure, servants who attended my every whim, and yet I was drowning in exhaustion. My joints ached. My heart pounded with every step. My reflection was a stranger. Shame colored my thoughts as I stood there, clasping my hands. "Forgive me, Great One," I whispered, "for not offering the respect you deserve. My body was failing me, and I didn't know why." He looked at me, not with pity, but with deep knowing. His gaze pierced through my silk robes, through the perfume of my riches, straight into the core of my suffering. The world grew silent around us, as though time itself bowed in reverence to his presence. "Do you truly wish to understand the cause of your pain?" he asked gently, with a voice that soothed my chaos. I hesitated. What if I wasn't ready? What if the answer revealed something I couldn't accept? But I nodded. My soul, tired of wandering through shadows, yearned for light. Without judgment, the Buddha spoke. "There are 5 roots to your suffering: indulgent feasts, excessive sleep, unchecked pleasure, scattered thoughts, and idleness." Each word struck me like a gong in an empty temple. I had long feasted like kings, slept like the dead, chased every pleasure like a starving man, and yet, here I stood, broken. "Discipline your meals, awaken your body, engage in purpose, be useful to others." His voice was calm, but carried the weight of mountains. I could almost feel the chains loosening, just by hearing what I had been too blind to see. His words echoed in my ears long after I left his side. At first, I struggled. My body resisted change. The first morning I rose before dawn, sweat poured from my skin as if years of gluttony and sloth were being forced out of me. I took on small tasks, helping a farmer lift grain sacks, feeding the poor with my own hands. My muscles ached, my pride screamed. But something within me stirred. A spark I hadn't felt in years. A strange, beautiful hunger. Not for food or pleasure, but for purpose. It felt like my soul was finally breathing. The days turned into weeks. My body, once sluggish and bloated, began to move with new strength. My thoughts, once dull and fogged with luxury, sharpened like blades. I began to sleep not from exhaustion but from contentment. I watched the sun rise not from a cushioned balcony but beside those who toiled in the fields. Every bead of sweat became sacred. My hands, once soft and unused, grew calloused with honest labor. I was becoming someone else. Or maybe I was becoming who I was always meant to be. That terrified me, and yet it thrilled me. The silence that once haunted me now brought peace. I no longer feared the absence of entertainment or distraction. I no longer needed to be waited on. I found beauty in small things: the weight of a water jug, the warmth of shared food, the laughter of children as they ran barefoot through the fields. I had once believed pleasure was found in gold and silk, but now true joy came from giving, moving, breathing, living. I was no longer dragging a lifeless body through the motions of privilege. I was awakening, slowly but surely, to a different kind of wealth. Months passed before I returned to the Buddha. This time, I arrived without horses, without silk, without trumpets. Just me, reborn in strength and clarity. I bowed deeply. "Master," I said, "you healed my body, but now I seek something deeper. My body is light, but my mind still stumbles through darkness. I need to see beyond the surface." The Buddha nodded as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. "You have walked the path of the body," he said. "Now, you must walk the path of the mind. It is longer and far more demanding." He continued, "The ordinary man feeds his body, but the wise man nourishes his mind." His words landed differently this time. I was ready. I could feel it. When you surrender to indulgence, you carve the path toward your own destruction. But when you commit to the path, you find not only salvation, but life itself. I didn't fully understand, but I felt the truth of it in my bones. I had come a long way, but the road ahead promised challenges far more invisible, far more cunning. The war of the mind had begun, and I was stepping into it. The Buddha's eyes held stories I could not yet grasp, of battles fought in silence, of storms that never made a sound. "If you only feed your belly, your soul will starve," he warned. I listened intently. "You must ask yourself, if you are just a root now, what kind of tree will you become? Will your branches offer shelter, or will you collapse under your own weight?" His words twisted inside me. I had spent years watering weeds, believing they were blossoms. Now, I had to grow something real, something worthy, and that began with learning how to truly think. I left the Buddha with my body strengthened and my mind ignited, no longer numb, no longer chasing empty pleasures. I had learned that sleep, food, and luxury were not enemies unless I worshipped them. I needed balance, yin and yang, effort and rest, pleasure and purpose. It was all a dance. I would no longer drift through life like a fallen leaf. I would walk with intention, carve meaning from every moment. I would pursue knowledge like water and use it not to elevate myself, but to serve others. That was my new mission. That was how I'd grow. I began waking with the sun, sitting cross-legged in stillness, listening not just to the world outside, but to the chaos within. My thoughts screamed, battled, wept. I realized how wild the mind can be when it's never been tamed. Doubts crept in. Old cravings knocked on the door. But I didn't open it. I watched. I breathed. Each time I resisted, I grew stronger. There were days I almost gave in, when the silence roared too loud. But I reminded myself, I had endured worse. I had survived the weight of indulgence. Now I was training to carry truth. It wasn't long before people began to notice. Strangers bowed with respect. Children followed me, curious about the transformation. They remembered the man who once couldn't walk without groaning, now climbing hills with ease. They asked questions I barely had answers for. But I realized something powerful. I didn't need to be perfect. I only needed to be honest. I told them I was still learning. That growth wasn't a finish line, but a path, one I chose every day. And with every conversation, every humble lesson I shared, I felt the light in my mind glow a little brighter. But not all attention was kind. Whispers began. He abandoned his wealth. He's lost his mind. Friends who once dined with me now looked away. I was no longer one of them. But I didn't feel anger. I felt pity, for I had once looked at seekers the same way. I had laughed at simplicity, mocked discipline, avoided truth. Now I saw that truth doesn't make you popular, it makes you powerful. I didn't chase approval anymore. I chased alignment. And though it was lonely at times, the clarity I had found was more comforting than any company built on lies. Still, the journey wasn't without darkness. One night, I awoke to the weight of doubt crushing my chest. A voice inside whispered, "You'll never be enough. You're just pretending." I almost believed it. Almost. But then I remembered the first time I lifted a sack of grain, the pain, the trembling, the pride. That moment taught me that doubt is loudest right before a breakthrough. I lit a candle and stared at the flame. "I am not who I was," I whispered, "and that is enough for now." I sat there until the voice faded into silence once again. As time passed, I stopped counting days and started collecting insights. The more I gave of myself, the more whole I felt. I taught children how to focus their breath, how to quiet the noise in their minds. I helped elders stretch aching limbs and shared stories of transformation. I wasn't preaching. I was remembering who I had been and who I refused to become again. Every day was a test, but every day was also a gift. My body was lighter, my heart was fuller, and my mind was finally mine, no longer my master, my companion. There were moments when I returned to the places of my past. The mansion stood as grand as ever, but it felt hollow now. The silk sheets, the banquet tables, the polished mirrors, they held no power over me anymore. I walked through those halls like a ghost, invisible to my former self. I greeted old servants with kindness. Some cried, recognizing the man I had become. I smiled, bowed, and left. Not in bitterness, but in freedom. You see, true wealth is not in what you keep, but in what you can walk away from without losing your soul. The Buddha's final teaching to me came not in words, but in a moment of silence. I stood before him, years older in spirit, and he simply looked into my eyes. That gaze said everything. "You have learned to walk," it said. "Now teach others to rise." And just like that, I understood. The path wasn't meant to be mine alone. My suffering had been a seed, my transformation its blooming, but the fruit was meant to feed others. I left not as a student, but as a messenger, not perfect, not enlightened, but awakened enough to guide the weary. I wandered through towns, villages, and temples, sharing my story not as legend but as proof. Proof that even a man consumed by indulgence, weakened by ease, blind to truth, can be reborn. I didn't offer miracles. I offered process. I offered patience. Some rejected it, others embraced it, but those who walked beside me found themselves changing too. One step, one breath, one disciplined moment at a time. I had once believed salvation came in a flash of light, but now I knew it comes in sweat, in struggle, in silence, in showing up every single day for yourself. Sometimes late at night I stare at the stars and remember who I was. I don't hate him anymore. He taught me what not to become. I thank him for breaking, for suffering, for eventually seeking help. Without that pain, I would have never tasted peace. And I want everyone listening to hear this. You are never too far gone. You are never too broken to begin again. Your body can heal, your mind can awaken, your life can change, but no one else can walk that road for you. You must choose, and if you do, you'll never be the same. And so I leave you with this. Feed your body, but also feed your soul. Sleep, but do not drown in it. Find joy, but not addiction. Be useful to others, but never forget your own growth. Life is a delicate balance, a dance between desire and discipline, between comfort and courage. Walk with purpose, live with awareness, and above all, nourish your mind like a sacred garden. Tend to it, protect it, expand it. For when the mind grows, so does your life. And when you finally awaken, you will look back and realize the pain was never punishment. It was preparation.